doing?
Hey, sis, how you doing?
I am good. Can you believe it? Oh my gosh.
I've been waiting for this moment all week.
Oh my God. Say.
Okay, so look, we have to remember that there's a whole audience watching us. And for that whole audience that is watching us, I want to welcome you to one of our Black Mom Magic events. TMP has been so honored to kind of celebrate Black History Month by celebrating the power of Black Mom Magic. And I can't think of a better way to close out this series today than to spend time with my sis, my diversity twin, Jackye Clayton. If you all don't know Jackye Clayton, Jackye is an acclaimed thought leader. She is an inspirational speaker on the topics of recruiting and DEI. She brings years of experience to recruiting across various industries, including technology, HR, legal, finance, and operations, and most recently served as the DEI strategist for Seek Out. Jackye was previously an editor for Recruiting Daily and currently co-hosts not one, but two popular podcasts, Inclusive AF and Dealing with DIB Topics, and But First Coffee, which focuses on human resources. In her role, that's right, in her role as VP of Talent Acquisition and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Textio, she leads all work, providing all DEI work, and provides critical expertise to customers. And she serves as a leading voice in the products that Textio creates for the broader ecosystem. Jackye is not only my colleague, a trusted advisor in the diversity space, but my friend and my sister. Jackye, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm like touched.
I know. And I guess I should do a brief introduction of myself for the people who are joining and I haven't had the pleasure to meet. My name is Rocki Howard. I am absolutely the proud Chief People and Equity Officer here at the Mom Project. I'm the host of the Voices of Diversity podcast. I identify as she, her, Black, Christian, Gen X wife, mom, and I'm going to cut the rest because I want to get to the conversation. So Jack, Black Mom Magic, huh? That's what we're here to chat about. I want you to talk about what your Black Mom Magic story is.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. I mean, I think of it. Do you remember back in the 70s when it was like, I can bring home the bacon, fried up in a pan? Remember that commercial? And then the rest we
home the
out.
bacon. Da.
I think it's like going through this journey is being present, but understand what's going on in the world. As a Black mom, things became very aware as you have children, how those feelings that I think are I have to make the world a better place. I have to navigate spaces for my children. And I really want to be there. I am married. My husband, who sometimes, if you look at my podcast, I call him my executive producer. And getting married to him, he is the lighter side of pale. Is that the way that we say that? And I do have two
white,
kids.
y'all. For those of y'all who don't understand what that means, he's white.
And
Jackye believes in the multiple dimensions of diversity, right?
Yes, multiple dimensions of diversity. I have two children, my oldest, Clay, and I have a 19-year-old. And before children, I was on the path of a business analyst. I was an IT business analyst and was privileged to take the time to stay home and raise my children. Now, I couldn't afford staying home and raising my children. And it was a major lifestyle change. But it was important that I could be there. So we raised my oldest, Clay, in their room was a closet. And had a crib in our room for TJ. You know, you work out, you do what you can. I spent 4 years at home and sold Tupperware while I was at home to make extra money. I love Tupperware. And at one point, my husband asked if I could go back to work. There was a lot of pressure. And I recognize there was a lot of pressure. We lived in South Florida at the time. And so I went back to work. I had a gap of 4 years on my resume, and didn't know what I was going to do. So I added Tupperware to my resume, that I sold Tupperware. Ironically, Robert Half was looking for new technology recruiters, and this was 2004. And so the way they did that was look for people who had sales and technology experience. So I was a business analyst and then sold Tupperware. And so they were like, you could be a recruiter. I had no experience. I didn't know what recruiters did. I didn't own a suit. I can tell you my first day, I literally fell asleep. The first week, I fell asleep at my desk 4 times. I had not sat down in the last 4 years ever for that long. Um, I had a verbal warning because I wore slippers to like the break room. Yeah, like going through all of that stuff. But that really is my journey. And somebody saw something in me, and I just leaned into that moment. And worked through. And at the end of the day, I had to take care of my family one way or another. They were willing to take a chance on me. I was willing to take a chance on them if it meant being able to raise my children and take some of that burden off of my husband so he could eventually be a stay-at-home dad. So that's my journey. Did I answer that right, Rock? Did I do good?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what's your journey? I would like to know your journey.
Wow. You know what? It's so crazy because I don't almost ever remember not working, right? Like, I came from crazy personal circumstances, right? I, as a child, lived in a situation where, gas was cut off, lights might go out. It might be 5 days before the food stamps come out, but the food is running low. I openly share this. I will still love, if anybody has government cheese, please send me some so I can make a grilled cheese, the best stuff in the world, right? But I knew from a very young age, or I believed from a very young age, that work was going to be the key to get out of this circumstance for me, right? And so I've been working since I was 13 years old. I don't know how not to work. And so then, I'm on this journey. I'm in retail. I'm doing all this kind of stuff. And you talk about kind of critical decisions along the way, right? And today, I have been married to the love of my life for 30 years, right? And I am a wife and mother of 4. I have, 3 girls that are 22, 29, and 31, and a 19-year-old son. But back then, I couldn't even envision what this looked like, right? Like this like wasn't a life I could even picture. And so I remember, I kid you all not, I went to the doctor because I had the worst case of the flu that I could imagine. And it wasn't the flu, y'all. I was pregnant, right? He came out and said, congratulations. And I'm like, for what? And there was a lot of pressure there because Raymond and I weren't married at the time. And I was very young. I mean, I had Layla when I was 21. So like I'm 20. I am now not married. I'm pregnant. There's that pressure about, I am not going to be a statistic. I'm just not going to do it. And I'm not going to let this child be a statistic. So whatever happens with the man, thank God it worked out. But if it didn't, it was about me and this baby girl and this life I was bringing in. And again, I knew work was going to be the key to that. And so as I think about my Black mom journey, like that magic, like what does that look like? And to your point, you go into situations, and if you don't have the privilege of having generations of people that have been in white collar situations and work, you do things like, walk to the break room in your slippers because no one has ever told you any differently. Right. And you were like, I didn't have a suit. I can't tell you how many of clothes came from the Goodwill that I was trying to put together this look as I made these transitions. Yes. And I actually showed up and got my first job as a receptionist when I was pregnant with Layla. And this is the first moment when you realize you make a career decision based on your children.
That's right.
So I was in retail. I was working for Payless Shoe Source of all places, and I worked at a store that had been robbed multiple times. Well, the fifth time it got robbed, I was in the store. I was very pregnant. Store was robbed at gunpoint, and until that time, I had always been like, "Oh, I can handle this." Boy, oh boy, I tell you, I quit the next day because
Mm-hmm.
I can't risk this
Mm-mm.
life.
No.
And so I showed up at a um, a temporary agency and said, "Hey, look, I'm very pregnant. I'm moving, but I can't sit still. So I need a temp job." And I was a receptionist for a recruiting firm. And there's how I wound up in this career that I absolutely love. And then I got to the other side of it. And my husband, who, deserves a medal for putting up with this special brand of crazy, was really ready to be very traditional. You be the stay at home wife, you take care of these kids. I'm going to go work and I'm going to build a life. And I will tell y'all, I was home for 3 months and my poor husband came home one day and I was like, and again, we weren't quite married yet. I was like, okay, here are the options. Either you and I go to Indy and we get jobs, or we go back to Chicago and we both get jobs, or the kid and I can go back to Chicago, but I can't stay in this small city that you've moved me to, and I am not a good stay-at-home mom. So to be able to be my best with my child, I need to be a person that works. And I think the next decision that we made, that when I think about Black Mom Magic, so you fast forward, we get married, we have 3 more children, and the cost of healthcare is
Oh.
crazy. You got 4, you got 2 in all day, you got 2 in before and after, you're worried about them, whatever. And so then we had to make this decision, like, this isn't working. And let me tell you, wasn't anybody making 6 figures back then. So now you're literally trying to, you're taking someone's whole salary to pay for childcare, right? And so here's other choices you have to make. And we made the choice that Raymond was going to be a stay-at-home dad. And that was really tough. So I think in the Black community, especially, my husband is 62 now. And when he said to his 5 brothers, his 4 brothers and his sister, that he was going to be a stay at home dad, these Black men were like, oh, no, 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 we don't do that. Like, we don't do that. We go out and we make the money and we take home. What do you mean you're gonna be stay at home dad? And I remember having to have that debate with my brother-in-laws. And I always say my brothers, really, because when family has been family for 30 years, they're no longer in-laws, they're brothers. But I was like, okay, I tell you what, you all each take a week and you all come manage these 4 kids, and you tell me that you work harder at your job than my husband's going to work at his. And until you're willing to do that, back off of my boo, right? And so, like, I just think that Black Mom Magic really comes down to, how do we make a way? We are trying to, I think we have been so conditioned that we are not only carrying the pressure of having to be twice as good to be acknowledged to get half as much, but now you're responsible for someone else's life, like really somebody else's life. And that's what it becomes all about. So you will climb mountains and go under valleys. You will put up with crap that you would never put up in other situations. You will bite your tongue. You will make yourself smaller. You will be disrespected. You will put up with unequal pay because you need to put a roof over that kid's head.
And another adult, because we both had stay at home. Our husbands were both stay at home dads. But as part of that as well, it was one of the things that did hurt personally. My husband got hurt at work. And so I like nice things. I went to a 100% commission job in 2008. And so
We see
I
those
knew
glasses. We know you like nice
I
things. I
like
see
nice
that
things.
bling.
Right.
I see you,
Mm.
sis. I see
So
you.
I was like, I like nice things. I have to work really hard and I have to figure out a way to do it. And the thought, and I remember, but what I did sacrifice, I remember being asked for ID picking up my own children or having mom say, I didn't know they had a mom. I assumed she was dead, that their mom was dead or they were divorced and they had it. Like literally telling me this to my face. And that was kind of the piece of that. But I wanted to ask you too, like, what has been some of the consequences of Raymond staying home? And then I'll answer some additionally, but I want to hear some of that as you continue your story.
Yeah, I do think it's the bias and the stereotype. So, no matter how many times we would go to school and say, Raymond is the parent that you call, inevitably they always call me. Right. And I remember the last time it happened, I was in the UK. So I get this phone call from the school and I'm literally like, and Xavier at that point in time, it was for Xavier, was a teen. And, I literally was like, they were like, well, Mrs. Howard, we're calling your son sick. And I was like, first of all, did you note who the parent to contact is? Did my son tell you to call me?
Mm-mm.
Because like they just couldn't because here's the truth. I'm not down the street, some little suburban wife. I'm in another freaking country. So I tell you what, hang up the phone and call the parent who is ready to come.
No,
But
wait, Rock. I got a phone call. They told me that I needed to take better care of my husband because he looked tired.
that's
My
because you
husband
live in
looked tired.
Texas. That-
That was in Florida, friend. That was in
oh,
Florida. They
well, I'm a
said you need to come take care of your husband looks so tired.
but it is that guilt. But you know what? It's those kind of comments that people, when you live a non-traditional life and you make those choices, and it's getting more and more common. But again, Raymond and I did it 20 years ago, right? And so to your point, it is you getting fed those comments, me getting those comments that make you feel like less than. Oh, you must be less than a mom, or you must be less than a good wife because
And
he's doing all of that.
oh, poor boo. And on top of that, it was because my husband was white. Everything we've owned, everything, all the vacations we've taken, everything that we've been able to do, the assumption is that it's based on my husband's ability to provide.
Yeah.
And it's still like that right now.
It's interesting though, because I do think for me, I tend to be, I think the world sees Rocky Howard,
Mm-hmm.
but in this house, I'm a pretty traditional Christian wife. Raymond runs this thing, right? But I do think that you have to be very conscious
Mm-hmm.
about the power balance and how somebody who lives in a society that says what men are supposed to look like, and that's your partner, and this isn't what it's supposed to look like, and this isn't what they've been taught about what a man should be. Like, you have to really make sure that your partner understands that you value them, because that can be part of the consequences. But I also think consequences can be positive too. So my favorite story about this, Jack, and then I want to come back to you, is I remember being out with one of my daughters, and this lady, we were in a store, and it was Nia, and someone said, "Oh, your hair is so pretty. Mommy did your hair." And she was like, "Mommy do my hair? Mommies don't do hair. Daddies do hair." And so, what I do think we've done is we've set an example for breaking gender norms that has had a very positive impact on how both my daughters and my son look at the world and how they interact in the world. What about you?
Absolutely. Yes, we have the same thing. And I think it's important to recognize that being a stay at home parent is tough. And then on top of that, my husband had to learn how to raise a black son and raise, a black child on top of that. So it was like triple duty because It was hair. It was going to different barber shops. It was understanding the experience and making sure that they were safe and understanding. Um, but at the same time, it's funny you say that. Like my children, like to this day, they'll say, "Dad, can you make me a glass of water?" They don't ask me for a glass of water. They know. They know better. That's what one of those things. But I think the sacrifices, one of the things that you have to give up is that dream that you're fed on television, that of some knight taking care of you, and you're just a damsel of distress to be cared for and put up, on this little pedestal, because it takes work. And we are a part of that, of the solution of the life that we want to live. And it really changed where it's like, I don't have to sit and wait for anybody to give me that life, right? I do not have to sit and do that. But it also meant that I had to find people that I could identify with. And at the time, like, my oldest is 21, my youngest is 19. You have a 30-year-old to 19. And we know at the time there wasn't that many people. And there was challenges just in your regular social norms of the assumptions that people make. And a lot of times my husband wouldn't want to go to different places because people always asked him what he did. And he would be like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. And they would be like, oh,
Side eye, side eye.
and would have nothing to say. Or I was in the, it's the same thing. It's funny how people make those assumptions, but it was time, but we worked through that. We worked
Yeah.
through that.
You do work through it, Jack. And it's interesting because I think there's a point to be made here too. Like for me, I also think once you say like my spouse is a stay-at-home parent, right? Then there's this assumption that you don't ever have to be mom, right? So I remember one time saying to someone, oh, I've got to go do X, Y, and Z. And they were like, well, I thought Raymond handled that. I don't get to abdicate my responsibility for
Right.
being a mother.
Right.
I still respond. We are partners in this, but more importantly, those are still my children. And so I think from a career mom standpoint, it's important for people to understand I already pay the price of not being in on certain jokes and not spending enough time or not being here enough. When I'm here, I still want to be mom. And so don't make those assumptions, right? And so I think it's interesting the experiences we have when we talk about being Black moms in corporate. And I'd be really curious for you. How do you think, or do you believe that your journey has been different as a Black mom being in corporate? Is your career different? Was your journey different than your white male colleagues?
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you, true story. It's just us friends, right? It's just me and you, Rock, right?
Just, yeah, it's just us. Let's
I
just talk.
remember, those days where you're like, I am so freaking tired. Like I've walked into a meeting and said, okay, listen, y'all interrupt me every time I talk. And I know if you interrupt me twice, I'm gonna be quiet. But I am gonna be true to my word, and I need to be able to have this conversation. So if y'all, and it was a room, it was all white men in me, 8 white men in me, 8 white executives in me. And I said, so if y'all could just like not interrupt me when I talk, we can make this a lot shorter of a meeting. I was really tired. Those are those days I'll call you and I'll be like, I was gonna get fired today. Like if I was gonna get fired today was gonna be that day. And the other part is that when we do have these meetings or we do have these gatherings where we have to find things out strategically, just because my husband is a stay-at-home dad does not mean he was raised with the skills based on the traditional measures to all of a sudden know how to do everything. I don't have somebody at home who knows how to pack for a cheer camp or necessarily buy all of the holiday presents or cook for the holiday meal because they weren't taught those lessons growing up. If you have some of those more traditional, and I am from Texas, so those types of things moving up. And so the difference was, oh, my spouse is going to be able to do that. And it's like, this is still my strength. There's certain things I had to let go, and I didn't have that backup. He was never going to clean the bathtub the way I cleaned the bathtub. He was never going to make dinner the way that I would make dinner. And I remember one day my mom said, and I don't even know where this came from. She was like, well, you're not starving and it didn't hit you, so you're going to have to get over
Well,
it.
I'm hoping we got higher standards than
But I
that.
was like, who taught you how to make spaghetti like that? Like, what are you doing? But you have to learn to let that go. And I think the other part is the journey is they looked at me. Part of the thing that was interesting is that I have had people make some inappropriate comments because of my husband who was staying home. Then also inappropriate things because some people acted like they were doing a favor to me as a Black mom to give me the space as if I didn't earn it. And then again, looking at those traditional roles, asked me to do things that I just don't do. Boo. Like I don't do those at home. I'm not going to do it for you. No, I'm not going to bring cookies to the office. I don't have time for cookies. I'm not going to take notes for the whole office. I'm not planning the company party. You've got the wrong person. And they would be asking me, but it was things that were never asked of my white male counterpoints ever. Never asked, never even thought of. And you would be looked at, side eyed if you were to ask.
Yeah, I think it's always a struggle. And I'm going to go to one that I'm sure there's some women in general out there who can come with me on this, but especially Black women and Black moms, right? Jack, you and I are not silent people. We are big energetic people, and people hire that passionate side. And when I'm in a conversation and I'm in a debate, right, then all of a sudden, oh, I must be angry. Like, don't talk to me like that. Like, that, just the whole energy of the way you show up. And so I think you find yourself navigating these spaces where you're like, no, I'm not angry. And I just said the same. I am engaging in this debate as your peer in the same way you engaged me. Why do I have to be an angry Black woman? Why
No, I
can't
am
I
angry. Right.
be?
I'm just
Well,
angry.
that's the next, we'll have that on the next conversation, right? But it, like, that assumption that I am different because I'm passionate because of the package I come in. I think also things that you know people don't think about when you're a woman is how you show up. So I remember I wore locks for several years. um and I remember back in the day working for a company. Don't look on my LinkedIn profile because y'all won't find the company. But I worked for a company that was on every list for diversity. But this same company told me, I had interviewed actually and had been asked to interview for a promotion. And that white male person on the other end said, would you be willing to cut your hair or change your hair? And when I said no, the feedback that I got was that I wasn't as professional. I couldn't be viewed as professional for that promotion. And so I'm not sure, like, how you even respond to that. My response was to quit and go work for another company, by the way. But I can't imagine that conversation ever happening with men and with white men. Typically, that's not something that you have to deal with. And the challenge is when you think about the social economic situations we're in, and this is going to
Mm-hmm.
lead into something that I hear you saying all the time. I needed to make more money to support these 4 kids. I needed that money. I was qualified, overly qualified. When I quit, they replaced the work I was doing with 2.5
Mm-hmm.
people. And so then I left and went to another company. And it's that challenge that you talk about, that I've heard you speak about, is that people of color, their resumes are often a little more zigzag because we have to make different moves to get the same kind of pay equity, respect, etc. in the workplace.
I think that's right. And so what's important when we talk about equal pay for equal work, it's looking at the actual tasks that you're doing and how do those things align. And so it's like you don't have the title, but you're doing the work. And that's what's so frustrating. Like I've talked to people that they are an MDR, right? A market, a sales representative, and they have four people that report to them, and they come up with the schedule, but they're not a lead or a supervisor or a manager, or who has been at the company for 5 years and are not considered for leadership. And the other part is if you are in a non-equitable situation, we were always told that we shouldn't talk poorly about the last organization that we've worked and then get judged or criticized because of gaps on our resume or of quick jumps. And so what do you do if you know that you were in an inequitable situation, treated unfairly? And so I left. You're not supposed to talk bad about the organization, but it like negates those experiences, that the kind candor that you have to have in order to grow and in order to find out if this is a place for us. And I think it's changed now where we are, I think more people feel like they can ask the questions that are important about fair and equity. What are you doing? What are your programs? What is that piece? But you have to navigate through. There's been lots of things. I always laugh. I say I haven't been qualified for any job I've ever had. Um, but somebody always said, I think you could do this. Or, oh, if I put this plus this equals this. Like, I always look at moms, especially, and I'm like, your first job out of coming from a stay at home parent, look at being like partnering as a project manager because you've already figured out what you're doing when you wake up, how to have breakfast, what to do with your kids, giving them their knowledge, putting them on a schedule, your life on a schedule, cleaning the house, doing the things that are all important. Or even if you have a stay at home parent, you're still having to navigate through all of those things and looking at calendars and working with your families. Project management is always a place where it's like, that makes sense because of the work you do. I just added the pregnancy pause on my resume saying like there's a gap. And it was like, what was I doing at this time? I was parenting the future. I was making sure that tomorrow's leaders were being well taken care of and nurtured and supported. And so I think that there's so many different things, but as we push through and tried to make, you and I both have tried to make space for others, it
Absolutely.
can be a very lonely journey. It's very lonely. I tease about saying I was an angry black woman, but you've heard me. I know it was probably the first times we connected where I was like, what do I have to be happy for?
Oh, it was. That's when I fell in love with you, right? I was like, I need to talk to that
It was
woman.
not a good day.
But Jack, you talk about something that's so important, that loneliness, because this isn't an easy road. The work we do isn't easy.
That's
The
right.
lives you leave aren't easy. And so in all of that, I do want to talk a little bit about how do you find that community? Like, let's talk about mentorship and sponsorship and friendship and its impact on the Black mom journey. Because, like, I'll tell you, I can't see myself doing this. And so, full disclosure, Jackye and I have a weekly conversation. It is on both of our calendars as a coffee date. And for all of the times that, our cup is emptied a little bit, we look forward to that as a place to fill up our cup. And so, Jack, talk about, the importance of when you're on this, doing this real, no matter what you do, how important is it to have those peeps in your corner?
Absolutely. I think it's fine. You talk about mentorship and sponsorship at work for people that can navigate careers or people that are in leadership. But what that is oftentimes is someone in the majority group, right, coming to work with a person of color to try to navigate them through the corporate pace. And what's missing is that underlying stress and sometimes feeling the undercurrent of what I'm dealing with on top of just my work that isn't getting through. It's not enough to tell me, because how am I supposed to do this when I'm feeling this other pressure or I don't feel like I belong? If you're at an organization where you don't feel like you are being included and where you belong, that's just not enough. So it's great that I have a sponsor or a mentor, but I also need somebody who I can talk to about what I'm dealing with right now. Right. I mean, I remember I said, I'm calling in black today because I am sick and
I
tired.
remember you did that. I so remember that.
They say, are you sick? And I was like, no, I'm black and I can't take it. I can't take it. I need to reassess because you need somebody, because nobody else was going around, especially like you look at like what's going on in Ukraine right now. And it's one thing to say, oh, yeah, that really sucks. Right. But when you have people on your team and you have people that you have to realize this is a bigger deal than that, that they're going through, they are going through something right now. And so you need a person that can help support through those moments and be there. And so there are times when we can see what's going on in the world. Women, black people are losing their right to vote. We're losing spaces to healthcare. There are the inequities within neighborhoods, and you are asked to either assimilate or get out. And it's not fair. So I'm going through something and I need somebody who I can talk to about that. And the higher you go up career wise, the lonelier it is because it is very personal information. You can't share everything with everyone. And so what I've done is stroven.
Strived.
I got a personal board of directors. These are people that are not just mentors at my own company. These are people that are going through the same Black mom experience as I am. So I can sit down and have some of these conversations taken out of the moment. How could I navigate? Because still have to feed our families. We still have to get our kids through college. There are all of these things. And so before I go in here and I'm gonna get fired today. So before I do that, let me have a conversation. Or this company isn't working for me. This other company says that they want me. What do y'all think? Of having that piece around of people that can also say, look, boo boo, that's too much. And we've had plenty of conversations where it's like, Rocki, you need to pull back.
You're truth tellers. Look, I'm really sensitive, and I know that we got to get you off the stage on time because you have another event, and I want to make sure we get to some of the audience Q&A too. But I want to say this because I have heard you say this, and I want to give an example of it. And this is why you need people in your life. It's all of those things that you just said. But I have heard you say, it's not only that I want you to succeed, it's that I'm not going to let you fail. And you need people in your life who will do that are your truth tellers, that'll let you move. So I want to share a very special story with this audience about what that's like and what that really means when people say you're ride or die. The last time I was on this stage with this audience was for our comeback summit. And so during day one of the comeback summit, my oldest daughter was rushed into emergency surgery. And so I was sitting in the lobby because these are the days of COVID. And I made one phone call. That phone call was to Jackye Clayton. And I said, first of all, I called her as my friend and said, oh my God, this is what's going on. And I need you to talk me down or talk me up or I need you to calm me down. But second of all, I've got to be on a virtual stage tomorrow. And if I can't do it, is there any way you think you might be? And I couldn't even get the sentence out. She didn't ask me what time. She didn't ask me about anything. All she said was yes. Yes. And Jackye and our marketing team were going back and forth until about 1:00 in the morning before we could determine if I was going to be on stage or not. But you know what? I didn't have to worry about it. That's what ride or dies are for. So when people, just be really careful about, like, mentors and sponsors and all of those have their place. And I would not be here if I didn't have those. But make sure that you check for your ride or dies. And Jack, I love you, baby. Thank you for being my ride or die. And, with that, what I really want to do is make sure that we catch some of the audience Q&A, right?
Yep. Beautiful.
So let's see what our team has. I think they're going to put some Q&A up. Okay. Rumi, what was the biggest challenge faced by these awesome women? Jack?
Being a woman in tech. It was hard because people still, like, even now, people didn't take me seriously when I was in technology. And so I did have to work with a lot of men and a lot of white men on top of that. And people didn't trust that I knew what I was talking about, like you were talking about, being talked over and then having to push back to fight for what's fair. while not making people so upset that I was going to lose my job. And then maybe on top of that, the biggest challenge was navigating that I needed to take the time when I knew I had to leave to take care of my children and make that determination of when I was going to have to leave and when I was going to have to stay. Some of those things were just tricky. What about you? I probably will think about something brilliant in like 5 minutes. That'll be a better example, to be
But
honest.
that actually, like, it doesn't have to be brilliant. It has to be real. We promised a real conversation today, and that's what you and I do. You know, I think we have so many challenges that feel heavy, but I,
Mm-hmm.
I think the one that changed it for me was I going to continue to try to have myself fit into this mold and chase this ceiling that I seemed to be bumping up against at a price to what felt like my spirit? Or was I going to come in and show up as myself and be ready to accept the consequences? Because for as much as everyone tells you that everybody wants you to show up as yourself, they don't want you to
No, they
show,
do
they
not.
do not want you to bring all of you to work.
They
Most
do
places
not.
do not want you to bring
Trust
your
me.
whole self to work. And I was at the point in time in my career, well, it was killing me not to do that. And guess what? Here's the other part of that truth. I was molding myself into what everybody said, and I still didn't get the promotions, and I
Mm-hmm.
still didn't get the, so why do it? And so that challenge of when I made the decision, and it was really two decisions. I'm not going to play this politics. I'm going to show up as myself. But two, that I was willing to accept the consequences. I remember talking to Raymond and saying, you're going to have to figure out how to raise these kids on this crappy salary that I make, because I'm never going to make any more, because I'm tired of not showing up as myself. And the reason why I bring that up is because I made a decision to do that at a time where I wasn't privileged to do that. Like there could have been real consequences for my family. Now I get to do it, and I'm privileged to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I'm going to go on to the next question. I will not. I want to make sure we get those in.
Yep. Oh, Jack, you
I
lead,
have
I'll
lots
follow.
of advice. One of the things is when you see, make sure that you're understanding the experience and allyship. Like some of the times you have to understand there is an undercurrent that's always going on. Like I always say, it's great that y'all want to do this in the last 2 years, but I've been Black my whole life. So if for allies and you have someone that you want to be an ally, connect with people. Don't guess and assume of those things that of things that are going on. And for Black women, I would like to also say find a place that's going to appreciate you. And I know that it isn't easy for everyone, but now is a really great time, if any, while we have all of these open positions. And look for someone who's willing to speak about you internally. If you really want to be an ally, you need somebody who's going to bring your name up in the back room and in the room where you're not invited. So that's who you know who your allies are. Um, the other piece is I would ask, make sure you go back to the organizations and ask them, like, this is your sign. If I feel like I'm being discriminated against for being Black or for being a woman, who do I let know? What is the process and how is this going to be handled on the other end? The way they answer that question as you're interviewing tells you everything you need to know. And if
For
they
sure.
say, "Oh, I don't know, that's never happened," you need to keep going. Keep
Right.
going. Get
Right.
out.
Yeah. So Jack, like for me, I think for allies, the first piece of advice I would give you is don't call yourself an ally. Let people know that you are here to support them, and do that through actions, not words. When you see something, say something. right? Now, don't do it to the disrespect of someone else, right? Like, you need to let people speak up for themselves. You don't necessarily need to do it in a big group, but there's lots of this systemic racism and bias that happens in rooms, and you know it's happening, and it probably doesn't make you feel good, but you're too afraid to step up, and you're too afraid to say something,
Can I
right?
share something, Rocky, that happened? This is important. I have an ally. Some of you may have seen online Jeremy Roberts. As you know, he's one of my best friends, and we've worked together 3 times. And I'll never forget one of the times we were working together. He called me. He goes, "I got us a raise."
That's
It
it.
it happened 2 times. He goes, "I got us a raise." I go, "What do you mean you got us a raise?" I'm happy. He goes, "Well, I asked for a raise, and I told him, if you're giving me a raise, you're gonna have to give Jackye a raise. So I got us a raise." And I was like flabbergasted. And it happened twice. Never in my life. That's a true ally. He was like, "Okay, well, while we're at it," because he didn't feel a problem asking for a raise, but I did. And so he got one for both of us twice.
That's an ally. I can't top that. I have no more advice. Except let me say this, right? It's also important to do the work. Understand the community you're trying to support. Immerse yourself. Read a book, listen to a podcast, listen to another perspective, ask sensitive questions, right? But be willing to do the work and be consistent about it. I think for allyship. But Jack, I know we have to close out. I would be remiss if in closing out I didn't ask you, you've got Black moms here who really see you as you've moved on up, you on the east side, you finally got a piece of the pie, girl.
Yes.
So what piece of advice would you have for the Black moms in our community who are on that journey today?
I would say reach out. LinkedIn, I see in the comments a lot of people sharing on LinkedIn. Connect with other people and start building your community of people, of safe people to connect with. Um, and as you go up, make space for others. It is so important that you make space, and don't take this for granted, and never sell yourself short. I don't think it's imposter syndrome when people have been telling you that you were not good enough or that we're not giving you the opportunities you knew you deserved. So don't sell yourself short. And if you're feeling some kind of way, call me and Rocki.
For
We'll point you
sure.
in the right direction. I will give you everything that I have.
For sure. I will drop. So, with that, I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to let you go run so that you can get to your other event. Jackie's going to go do a phenomenal session with Leapgen and some of our other kind of close friends. Tell the crew I said hi.
I will.
Congratulations on their 100th episode. I love you, sis.
I love you too.
Mwah. Um, my piece of advice, have a Jackye Clayton in your life. Have your version of Jackye Clayton in your life. Have those people who will tell you the truth, who will show up authentically, who will put their arms around you and kick your ass in equal measure. Those are the people who help you make it to the next level. Find your peers in the industry who you can have real conversations with about the work we're doing. I not only respect Jackye as a friend, and if you guys see me looking, I'm trying to grab her LinkedIn profile to drop in the chat for you. I not only see her as a friend, she is a respected colleague of mine, and I trust her advice. You can't trust everybody's advice. So be really careful who you call friends, who you take advice from, who you call mentors, who you call sponsors. Make sure that you are in community with people who accept you who you are, who understand your strengths and your superpowers and encourage you to use those, and who will be your ride or die. And so I really appreciate you all being on the stage with us. Thank you so much. I can't wait to kind of check out the comments. Jack and I have been talking and focusing today, but that is what Black Mom Magic is all about. Happy Black History Month to you all. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.